So, how are we going to find the matrix A inverse? The overview is we reduce the matrix that consists of the A matrix here and the identity matrix here to the form where the identity matrix is here. And when we can reduce the A matrix to the identity matrix, if we reduce all the rows, that's going to change the identity matrix into the inverse matrix. Now, what do I mean by the identity matrix? Let's make sure the identity matrix is just the matrix that has ones on the main diagonal and zeros everywhere else. So we want to do that. Now, I asked you to write down this matrix. Okay, so you should look down in terms of what you should already have written down. You should have the A matrix written down. I want you to write this matrix, the A slash dot, the I matrix, the dotted line with the I matrix, okay? So we want to write this matrix. Okay, well, you should have paused and done that before you looked, but here it is. Here's the A matrix, and here's the identity matrix. Very straightforward. Now, we want to reduce this matrix to this. And we've already talked about how we can reduce using row operations, but we've done that with the augmented matrix, and it's just the same here. So if you've mastered what you do with the augmented matrix and practiced it in doing the problems that have been assigned, you should have no serious trouble doing this. However, we did end up with a lot of trouble, mostly related to the arithmetic of adding fractions. And schools of education should be, I think, subject to a widespread lawsuit for their ignoring of for the inability of anybody in the recent generation to do fractions. Okay, we put calculators in students' hands. We don't ask them to actually do any fractions after they're about 11 years old, and they get to college and they can't do this. However, it's an easy thing to learn, and in the process of doing some of these matrices, if you don't know how to do it, you should be able to learn it fairly easily. Okay, so in order to reduce this matrix to this form, the very first thing we want is a 1 here. That 1 is going to be very helpful. So what we do to get a 1 here is we multiply this entire first row by 1/5. That'll give us a 1 here. It's going to give you fractions. Some people didn't even want to start this problem because they didn't want to deal with fractions. You have no choice. No choice but to deal with fractions. Okay? And actually, you do kind of have a choice, but it's even worse than dealing with the fractions. So you just want to learn to deal with the fractions. It gets messy, but it's not that difficult. Okay. So you got a 5 here. You want a 1 here. It's easy to get it. You multiply the first row by 1/5. Multiplying this row by 1/5, you should write that out yourself. Write out this row, and then write out what you get when you do 1/5 of the row. Okay, you're going to get 1, -4/5, 6/5, 1/5, 0, 0. 1/5 of 5 is 1. 1/5 of -4 is 4/5. 1/5 of 6 is 6/5. 1/5 of 1 is 1/5, and 1/5 of 0 is 0, and the same here. So we do that, and we get the new first row. Now, having gotten the new first row, we're going to use it to wipe out the numbers here and here. Okay, so we take our new first row, which is this. If we multiply this new first row by 3, the 1 is going to match up with a -3. So what we do is we multiply this entire row by 3, and then we add it to this row. And that's what I indicate here. The second row of the previous plus the new 3 times the new first row being this row. Okay, now I've actually written out the details of that calculation up here. 3 times the new first row, well, 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times -4/5 is -12/5. If you don't understand that, you really need to review fractions. 3 times 6/5 is 18/5. 3 times 1/5 is 3/5, and 3 times 0 in both cases is 0. We add that to our second row. Now, it's not the new second row because we don't have a new second row at this point. The only second row we have is this one right here. And we're going to add that So we just copy the second row down, right there it is, and we add it to the 3 times the new first row. As advertised, 3 and negative 3 gives us 0, so we're going to get our 0 here. And then everything else just has to add as it does. Okay, 5 is 25 fifths. Adding 25 fifths to negative 12 fifths gives us 13 fifths. Negative 3 is negative 15 fifths. Adding negative 15 fifths to 18 fifths, we get 3 fifths. And then adding 0 to 3 fifths, we get 3 fifths. Adding 0 to 1, we get 1. 0, 0 gives us 0. So right here is the resulting row. Second row plus 3 times the new first row. Okay, now we want to get a 0 here. Now I've written it out, but you don't see how we got it yet. Let's look. Yeah, let's pretend this isn't written here. How are we going to get rid of the 2 here? Using this row. Okay, well, if we take negative 2 times 1 and add that to 2, we're going to get 0. So we're going to take negative 2 times our new first row, this row here, and add it to our third row. I haven't written out the details, but I can point it out. I haven't written them down here, but what we're doing is the third row here plus negative 2 times the new first row. Negative 2, 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. Adding that to 2, we get 0. Okay? Now, what's negative 2 times negative 4 fifths is negative 8 fifths. That has to be added to 3. 3 is 15 fifths, so negative 8 fifths, wait a minute, messed up, okay. Say it again. Negative 2 times the new first row is negative 2 times negative 4 fifths. That's 8 fifths. Adding that, 8 fifths to 3. 3 is 15 fifths. 8 and 3 is 23, so we get 23 fifths. Okay, negative 2 times 6 fifths is negative 12 fifths. Adding that to negative 4. Negative 4 is negative 20 fifths. Negative 12 and negative 20 is negative 32. Now, you should have done this already. You should have just paused and jumped ahead and done this addition so you would understand better what I'm telling you. Negative 2 times 1 fifth is negative 2 fifths. Adding that to the 0 we have here, well, we get negative 2 fifths. No problem there. And then our other two numbers are zeros, so negative 2 times either of those is going to be 0. And if we add those to 0 and 1 respectively, we again get 0 and 1. So we've already wiped out the first row here. We've got our 1, our 0, and our 0. Okay, what do we do next? Well, we look at what we want. We want 1, 0, 0. We've now got it. First row, or first column is correct. Second column needs to have a 0 here, a 0 here, and a 1 here. It has none of those. What's the easiest thing to do? You should pause and think. What's the easiest thing to do to get one of these numbers? Either a 0 here, a 1 here, or a 0 here. Now you should have paused and thought this through. The obvious thing is you multiply by 5/13, which will make this 1. So we take the second row and we do 5/13 times that row. 5/13 times 13 fifths is 1. Of course, 5/13 times 0 is 0. 5/13 times 3 fifths, 5 times 3, well, I've written that down here. 5 over 13 times 3 over 5. 5 divides the 5, leaving us just 1/13 times 3 over 1, or 3/13. So we get our 3/13 here. And then, of course, conveniently, we have 3 fifths here. We multiply that, and we again get 3/13. And then we multiply 5/13 times this 1, and we get 5/13. And of course, we've got 0 over here. Now, we've got this row. So far, we wouldn't have this row or this row, but we want to go ahead and get this row. We want to get the 0 here and the 0 here. So how do we do that? Well, to get a 0 here, the row that we have right now for the first row is this one. If we add 4 fifths of the new second row, we're going to get 4 fifths, because 4 fifths times 1 is 4 fifths. And let me note that a lot of people had trouble telling me what 4 fifths times 1 is. 1's the identity. You multiply anything by 1, and you get that anything. Okay, 4/5 times 1 is 4/5. Added to negative 4/5 is going to give us 0. So this row is going to be 4/5 times this second row added to this first row. So we get a 0 here, and we get a bunch of other numbers here that I haven't filled in. Now I'll fill those in and just use the matrix. But we were getting toward the end of class, and this is as far as we got in class. Okay, we know we're going to get numbers here, and if we add 4/5 of this row to this row, we're going to fill in the rest of those numbers. What's the next thing? We should be getting used to this now. Think, how are we going to get a 0 here? Well, we're going to add negative 23/5 times the second row, new second row, to the existing third row, and we're going to get a third row here. And when we do that, we're going to get negative 97/13 here, if I've done my arithmetic correctly. And I've done that calculation here. I'm not going to go over it. Straightforward fractions, you need to learn to do them. But what we do is then we multiply the third row by negative 13/97. Okay? And actually, when we do that, we're going to get a 1 here, not a negative 97/13. Okay, negative 13/97 times negative 97/13 gives us 1. And then whatever numbers we have here in the remainder of this row will come down and form the remainder of this row. At this point, we've got our 3 1s here. We just need to get a 0 here and a 0 here, and it should be obvious to you how we're going to do that. Now I'll do an extension and complete this calculation and complete the process of finding the inverse matrix, and then we'll see how to apply that to get the final solution.